Good afternoon.
Howdy.
Where are you at? Or you have got some quiet roosters, let me tell you. I didn't realize you got to the Philippines again.
Not yet. I'm on my way.
On your way?
Won't be
That
long.
that background is actually at Jinjin's place.
Yes,
And
sir.
it's funny that you say that because look at your shirt and my shirt and how it's totally not planned.
No, you didn't ask permission to wear that. Come on, man.
Oh, you're the one that brought it to me, so I
I
figured
know.
if you brought it halfway around the world, then I should be able to wear it, right? Good evening, everybody. We're gonna talk about pretty wide range of stuff tonight. You know, we're gonna do our live Q&A. We've got a couple different topics based on some of the message that we've got from y'all and some of the funny stuff that we see on some of them chicken groups. I actually heard one, and this is hilarious. They were talking about lowering the humidity because the humidity in their tabletop incubator had gotten too high. And, you know, instead of mine like raising up the side of it and putting some straws in it and blowing into it, which puts warm air in, but it makes it circulate a little better, they were going to take a screw and screw it into the eggshell. And there was lots of people on the thread that actually went along with it and was like, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, that'll let the pressure out. And I'm like, probably let everything else out too. Yeah, so we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff tonight. And hopefully you guys will have some questions as y'all normally do. And tonight, hey, it's live Q&A. My challenge for you guys tonight is to stump Jeff. I'll even go as far as to say if somebody in the lower 48 states, Alaska, Puerto Rico, Guam, or Hawaii can stump Jeff tonight, I will ship you a praying dummy that's brand new.
Wait. Stump me in what category?
I mean, it's got to be okay. It's got to be chicken related.
Well, I mean, like feed management, something like that. Look, they can ask me something like, where did Sid Taylor's come from? And I lose, right? So it has to be something that I'm at least half good at. So,
okay. All right. So here's the caveat. It's got to be something relatable. Like you can't say, well, do you know the histories of the little Eds or the Sid Taylor oranges or whatever? You know, none of that kind of stuff. But if somebody can stumble him on a normal question, I'll send you one of these. Is that fair?
Okay. Let's see how it goes.
And I'm already getting text messages. It doesn't have to be nutrition. It could be animal husbandry, caring for. Tonight we're going to talk about, I know typical molt's about 2 months away, but we're already getting questions about what to do and how to prepare for your birds molting. So, we're going to talk about that. So y'all, I can't make the title of the show, Let's Screw with Jeff. Although, he would figure it out.
You just basically said that. So
I know, but you're here, you're not too chicken to hit disconnect right now.
Look, you know what? Anytime you do a Q&A, it's basically, it feels like Stump Jeff. Okay, so that's good. Uh-oh, he ran off. He's back.
I get it. I had, so for demonstration purposes, I had to.
You had to go get the dummy cock. Okay.
Yep, got a handle, and hopefully your birds are strong and you need it. But yeah, boom, got it right there. I'm gonna put that sucker in a box, and you get
Straight
it there
from the Philippines. Yep, made in the Philippines.
Yeah, kind of straight. Yeah, from the Philippines to Taiwan and Pennsylvania and Texas, back to Alabama. Typical route.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Get in the rooster lot. Yeah. All right. So tell me this. Why is summertime different than any other time of the year?
For
nutritional requirements.
Yeah.
How to take care of your birds. What should you do differently? Because this time of year, like a lot of folks ain't even showing birds anymore because it's too hot for that. Okay. Now, people that have real birds that can handle working all year round like everybody else, they are, but there's some people that are already clocked out for summertime break.
Okay. So just like you and I, right? The diet requirements of a bird changes with every season, depending on where you live and how cold it gets. Mm-hmm. So, in the colder months, they want more energy. That's a really good time to increase your corn, lower your protein, right? And get them through the winter, depending on what you're doing with them. You don't want to go too far, right? These are small adjustments. These are just little, like wintertime, 15, 16%, especially if you're anywhere north where it gets cold for an extended period of time. I'm not talking about one night where it freezes, right, down in Alabama or something. I'm talking about, a month of 30 degrees. I'm talking about a month of freezing weather or 2 months of freezing weather, something like that, right? So, you adjust down for the winter, your protein down for the winter, you increase your energy, right? And in the summer, their appetite goes down because of the heat. They really don't want all those calories, right? Or they don't need those calories. So, in the summertime, I like to be feeding an 18, 19, or even a 20%, right? Just to make sure I'm getting everything into them. And it's not just about the protein, right? I mean,
protein's not the most important part.
No, not even close, right? But, just, managing the temperature, managing the weather, managing the stress. But, so let's see, 16 in the winter, 17 in the spring, 18 in the summer, right? When you start cooling off again, you go back to a 17, then you go back to a 16, right? So you're constantly moving based on the temperature, what the bird's activity level's doing, their need for the amino acids and their need for vitamins and things like that stays the same year round. Okay. Like, we still want the 6,000 units of vitamin A and the 3,000 units of vitamin D and the, 100 units of vitamin E per pound, those sort of things. Those are pretty much constant unless you got a health struggle going on, like you're fighting off something disease wise.
Yeah.
Your vitamins stay the same. Your amino acids like 1.1 for the lysine, at least 0.45. 0.5 is better on the methionine. Those are constants. Okay, those remain the same year round. Okay, the only thing that really goes up is their calories. The calories in the summer go down. We're looking for like 350 calories in the summer, where we're looking for 450 calories in a cold winter, right? That's not a big change. Believe it or not, that's only about 5 pieces of corn. Okay, that's not a huge change.
For a rooster, he's going to be courting women in the summertime, so he's going to want to be looking his best.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's going to want to look his best, so he's got to keep the fat down, and he's got to keep his nutrition up, because he's going to need the 6-pack, and he's going to need them muscular arms, legs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
so he doesn't need to be carrying a whole bunch of extra fat, June, July, and August, right? He's miserable, with all that extra fat on him. And, but,
I mean, I recently, well, not recently, it took me several years to do it, but in the last year and a half, I probably dropped about 40 pounds, probably in the past year. So I'm actually curious how this summer is going to be for me. And I'm going to compare myself to a rooster. Alex has this question, and he called us talking about it earlier. Since the mold is coming soon, and some people want to get their birds ready for show season quicker than others, what are some ways that you can force your birds to molt in order to have them ready for show season early?
So there's several methods of forcing a bird to molt. The easiest one is just to do a major feed change, right? So, you're feeding them a high fiber, low energy, low protein feed. I mean, we're shooting for about 11% protein and a lot of oats in that, maybe a lot of alfalfa meal or alfalfa pellets in it. We're cutting the corn almost completely out. We're cutting the protein almost completely out, right? Going way down. Which, again, we're keeping the vitamin levels the same. And we're cutting back. So, for the guys that are feeding about 3 ounces of feed, you're going to cut back to 2 ounces of feed. And that should put them into a molt. Okay. So, and you have the birds that are really stubborn about it. Well, then you take their water away for 1 or 2 days. And that's another way to do it, right? And for hens that don't want to quit laying, you put them in a dark box for 24 hours, right, without feeding water, and they'll quit laying, and that'll trigger a molt. So those are pretty much the 3 normal ways of triggering a molt, getting them into a molt. So
what you're saying is that you're encouraging people to actually feed scratch at this point.
No.
If you want to trigger
no, because scratch has too much corn, has too much wheat in it, right?
Oh yeah,
I want like a really high fiber. So you're looking for oats, alfalfa, right? And alfalfa is really good because it has a lot of vitamin A in it, right? So it's supporting that bird going through the molt. And and I had a guy in Arkansas do this last year, and he molded them. He did it correctly, right? And it took almost 4 months for his birds to drop their feathers. And he kept saying, "Man, what's taking so long?" I said, "They're fat." And he goes, "No, they're not fat." I said, "Just keep going," right? So they are using, well, they're using up their stored fat, right? Their internal fat, the fat on their body. So they're going to hold feathers until that fat is gone, until they can't hold it anymore, right? And then the final feathers will drop out. He got a little crazy and he got impatient and he pulled the tail feathers out because that was the last thing left on a few stags, right? Pulled those tail feathers out. Well, they didn't grow back in right the next time, right? They didn't look good. They didn't look right. So did a little bit of damage. By pulling those tail feathers. But when we get the right amount of fat off the bird, the feathers will drop. Okay. So you need to watch your body weights. So like if you're starting with a cock or a stag around 5 pounds, I want to get him back down to almost 4 pounds. Not quite, like, 4.4, 4.5, somewhere in there, kind of his stag weight.
I was going to say, you want him to hit stag weight.
I want him to hit his stag weight. Okay. And this does a whole lot of things. It resets a lot of the body functions in there. So it actually will reduce his testicle size. It gets the fat away from his testicles. So when you bring him back on a good feed and you bring him back out of the molt, he's actually going to have more sperm production and more, a higher activity level. And just like that teenager, coming out of
I was going to
coming out of
say that.
feeder
So he's
season.
going to be like he's 18 years old again, ready for senior prom.
Exactly. And so if you time it right, total molt, if you do it right, total molt should be between 60 and 90 days. Okay. Till feathers off, feathers back on. Right. Full recycling shouldn't take more than 90 days if you did it right. Okay. So
see, I think I followed your methodology last summer, and I think mine was, it might have been 60 days, maybe a little less, because y'all know, look, some of the stuff Jeff says just sounds out there. And he's like, oh no, I'm telling you, if you do this, I guarantee you this is how it'll work. And I was like, well, I mean, the guy has been doing chickens for 40 years, so he might know something.
30. I've been doing poultry nutrition for 29 years. I'm coming up on 30. So
okay. I was
right around the corner.
Sorry about that.
That's
And
all right.
so, I did it, and a couple days go by, I didn't notice anything. I'm like, he's full of crap. And I think it was about week 2, week 3. I come home, and I did not hear a whole lot of racket in the yard, which is not normal because I drive a diesel, and it's almost like your dog, they know when I'm coming home, and they'll start talking to me, and I have to go back there and check on them. Well, I didn't hear them. So I was like, oh God, what happened? And I go back there, and there's freaking feathers all over the place. It like a weasel came in and killed 100 chickens type feathers all over the place. So I'm freaking out. I'm going from one pen to another, and I'm looking for red, and I don't find anything. I just find a lot of naked birds. And I was like, he was right. Dang it. He was right. So, I mean, I hated it, but I will say when I made it to where I was in control of the molt and they all did it at the same time, I didn't have some birds looking like they were on meth, some birds looking like they were on some kind of weed kick where they were doing nothing but snacking all day. All of my birds did it at the same time. They dropped their feathers. They were looking really good. And, within a few more weeks, I saw feathers when I picked them up. Pick up this little naked chicken, and I see little sprigs all over its body, because going through this process, like Jeff had described, the new feathers were pushing the old ones out. That's why they came out clean and everything. I mean, this happened over a 2-day period. So it was pretty awesome. But afterwards, this past breeding season, I had a lot better of a hatch rate than really what I needed. I might have hatched out 1,000 birds or more this past year already, because fertility was really high. So, we'll talk about that some more. We've even talked about doing a molt ration to help you guys get it right. So that might be a thing coming. We'll offer that in our flat rates, and that way you don't have to worry about it. You just feed that until they stop dropping feathers, and then go back to feeding them your normal, nutritious, whatever you're giving them. Yeah.
Well, depending on where you want to post it, we can post a molt ration if guys want to try and make it on their own locally, which is fine with me. I don't just do it. But if you're going to do it right. Okay. Don't do this half-assed. Don't give me none of it. And the birds, they're going to look ugly. But here's what guys don't understand is when the bird goes through the molt, that first couple weeks, their body temperature actually goes up. They're going through a fever and they feel sick, right? And if you don't, by pushing the energy, by keeping them on the same feed or even increasing the protein, you're making the molt worse for them, right? Because they can't recycle if you're feeding them an 18 or a 20% protein in a hurry for those feathers to come back. So that first 2 to 3 weeks of that molt, you're actually making the problem worse, right? So, I mean, do what you got to do. I'm not going to argue with guys tonight in the comment block. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it a long time, right? If you want to do it right. But everybody who did do the molt correctly last year was totally amazed at how the feather quality was so much better than the previous year. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The feather structure, the feather quality, and the health of the bird was far greater than it had been in the previous season. So you do what you want. I'm only here to give you information. You don't like it. You don't like it.
I mean, hey,
you know what? They're your birds. Do what you got to do.
I was going to say, just like click on another thing. Here's a comment. JW Woody said they won't water more than feed. And that is actually really true. A bird should have no less than twice as much water as they do feed. In the summer, may get close to 3 times or 4 times, depending on what's going on. Corey Wright, he's not far from me down here. What's the correct way to figure your protein feed mix? Like I'm doing 3 bags of flock riser and a 1 5-grain scratch. So what you do is you take these 3, and so whatever the Purina flock raiser protein level is, you write that number down 3 times. And then whatever this 5-grain scratch is, you write that number down once, you add them together and you divide by 4. There's your average protein. And
right. So
when you add that to it, you add 1 point.
Yeah. So the flock raiser is 20% protein. So 3 times 20% is 0.6.
Yeah, that's going to be 60.
It's going to be 0.6. And then your 5-grain scratch at best is 10%. So, 1 times that is 0.1. So you got a total of 0.7. 0.7 divided by 4. Let's see, 0.7 divided by 4. 17.5. And then the Rapido is putting you up at about 18.5.
Yep. Quick little math lesson for you right there. And a lot of people, I'm really glad Corey brought up that question, because I see a lot of people asking that question. And, other people, when they'll feed some crap and mix it with some good stuff. And, I'm just like, what are you doing? You need to look at this. So, Corey, I'm really glad you asked that question, because a lot of people don't know how to calculate what that is. That I like that. Let's see here. So the reason you would want to force the molt is so you can get them ready for show season. So you can have all the birds molt at one time. If your birds molt correctly, like Jeff said, you'll have a lot better fertility when you go to hatch. Or if you're like Kelly and live up in Canada and don't want your birds to be naked when it starts snowing, you'll get them to molt a little earlier so they have their feathers.
Look, the molt is just it's an annual recycling of the chicken's body. It's supposed to happen. Okay, it is, but everybody fights it, right? As soon as they see the molt, they start jumping on higher protein, and you don't jump on the protein until all the feathers come off, right? You just you need to help them through that part. So, all right,
here's
some other questions out there.
Here's one. Okay, so at first I thought this said in roosters. What is the purpose of the DDX4 gene in hens? Because I mean, if you have it in a rooster, you might have some other issues. But the DDX4 is actually part of the female fertility. And it has to do with the ovulation period. Like for commercial birds, it starts at 18 weeks post hatch because they got that kind of manipulated to make it to where they start laying at a very young age. And so, but that DDX4 gene, that has to do with their fertility, when they start laying eggs, how often they lay eggs, all that stuff is tied into that. That's a great question. Ooh, here's one for you, Jeff. Can egg quality be increased for older hens for breeding?
Absolutely. Right. If you'll put that hen through a molt, right, and if you keep feeling her pelvic bones in the back until they're hard and sharp, right, until they're firm, like they feel more like a bone than a rounded off something, and mold her right, and bring her back in. This is a great question because a friend of mine just commented that he had a 14-year-old hen laying eggs. 14-year-old hen. She's kicking out eggs. So yeah, you can, but you have, if she's carrying too much internal fat, she's not, right? Because the fat is formed around her ovaries, around that oviduct, and she's not gonna, you're not gonna be happy. Plus, when you do the molt, right, you're rebuilding the eggshell gland, so you get better eggshell quality on the next lay cycle. Yeah, but Tansley, you can absolutely, bring that bird around. I got lots of guys with 8, 9, 10-year-old hens still breeding, right? Still breeding, giving fertile eggs. Problem is when the hen gets, past like 4 or 5 years old, they start getting really fussy about what cock you put in with them, right? They will not squat for any cock. They're looking for the right guy. So she may not squat down and let him top her if it's not the right rooster. So that's the only downside I've seen.
But usually, like, if you've got birds that are 3, 4 years old and they're good brood fowl, you put them together. Me personally, I would treat them like an old married couple. I would leave them two together. Just for that reason, once they get together and they're a good fit and that they're throwing off some good chicks, why change it? Why would you want to mess with that?
I can see where Tansley. All right, so let's say he's got a multi-time winner, right? Multi-time winner, and then he knows that a particular hen she's given the best stags, right? So her chicks, right? They have the right, demeanor, they have the right gameness, they have the right whatever, and so she might be the secret to all of the success, right? But again, and I hear what you're saying, but if he's trying to put, a certain rooster because of his ability on that old hen, she may or may not take him, right? So you just have to watch. She may not stand still for him. So good luck.
Man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
I have our friend that sends me text messages. He wants to know, if a red cock is bred to a gray hen, what color will the stags be?
They should be red. I think they're going to be confused, but they should come out red.
I mean, that most of the plumage coloring traits do come from the cockbird. More of your physical traits come from. So,
actually, I wouldn't be surprised in that case. You might actually even have some sex-linked qualities where the pullet chicks may come out gray, or the color of grays, and the stags may come out red, or the cockles may come out red.
Yeah, I think if
Kona says I got it backwards: red pullets and gray stags.
Yeah, but I will say this: with that, it's going to depend on the purity of those birds.
Right.
You got to have, and you know, I've actually done some sex link because I live close to a city where people can only have pullets, and you know, far be it for me to not take advantage of that, but you've got to have a bird that has that dominant. You got to have, they've got to be clean when they're bred. If you take a barnyard mix that's been barnyarded a few times, you don't know what you're going to get when it's going to be like a box of chocolates. But if you have clean bloodlines, they'll reverse colors.
I'm assuming most of the guys listening are keeping families. I mean, typically what I see on the better yards that I've visited, I see really clean families of grays, really clean families of hatch, really clean families of kelsos, right? Where they're always breeding those and selecting the best out of the hatch. And they only cross those colors for a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't do it all the time. And then whatever comes out of the cross never gets used for breeding ever, right? Doesn't matter if it's a winner or not. It does not, because the good way to muddy up your family lines is to cross over across to, you know, something else, right? Then you really don't know what you got.
And if you go on a yard and you're wanting to figure out where the brood fowl are and where the other fowl are, you'll want to look at the ones, look for the pens that are like a prison cell, that a bear couldn't get into them. Those are the pure brood fowl. They have their qualities, they have what they want, like that's them. And every cocker knows why they have this family of grays, this family of hatch, this family of kelso or clarets or whatever. If it's mugs, you know, everybody knows why they have that particular blood, because, you know, my hatch may be different than Tansley's hatch. I know why I have mine, and he knows why he has his. When we decide to show, we know what kind of show we like. So that's why we pull one out, boom, here you go. We hatch them out. And those birds that we hatch out never have a purpose of breeding. They're not there for egg production.
They're terminal.
They're terminal.
Terminal production, right? You use them and
that's
it. You eat the pullets and you raise out the stags.
Let's see here. Yeah. See, you got to have a homozygous, or the color swapping won't work. Corey has a question. He's got a pair of clarets, and he pairs them every single year. He raises babies. They do very well. Really good show fowl. But this particular year, she will not set on her eggs. She'll lay in the nest box. She just won't set.
So even the experts out there that know way more about chicken, you know, psychology than I do, they have yet to determine exactly what triggers a hen to set. And the best they can come up with is she reaches a certain point of lay, but they're waiting for the really hot temperatures to kick in. So she may not set. They feel that it is an excessive amount of sunlight and really high temperatures that trigger broodiness, or getting a hen to set on a nest. Now, some of it's hereditary and it's traits, but because I've tried to do all the research and figure out what makes a hen go broody and how do you stop it, right? Because most of my customers don't want broody hens.
Oh yeah, commercial egg layers, they don't want them to go broody. Yeah, they just want them to lay them.
It's something about light intensity, and it's something about temperature. When it gets to a certain heat temperature, something inside of her just switch trips, and you can't control it, right? One year it'll be early, next year it'll be late, and something in the environment will trigger it, and there's no way to control it, really.
It's just like an adult female. You just can't control them.
I hope your wife ain't watching this. You will be in the doghouse.
I would not even try. Not with my wife. I wouldn't even try that. She would fix that real fast.
Yeah.
All right, here's another question I got. And I don't know, like, some of these that I'm getting messaged to me are more genetic based than anything else. Is a round head recessive or a pea comb recessive over a straight comb?
To my knowledge, the pea comb is recessive over the straight comb, but I ain't going to guarantee that. I mean, I can't say that 100%. Again, what's hiding in the hen, and what kind of rooster did you put on her? But you could get either.
Well, a pea comb can actually most of the time is dominant. But there again, it's going to depend on homozygous or heterozygous and how good your genes are.
Kona says the same thing. Pea comb's dominant over straight.
But again, I mean, I don't like them. I don't like them because I want to trim them. But if you're like Kelly, who's in Canada, or one of our friends up in Vermont or something like that, and you have brood fowl, you're probably going to want a pea comb because you don't want it to get frostbit in the wintertime. Let's see here.
The guys up north dub them do just the same as everybody else. So.
Yeah. How can you maintain proper hydration levels for chicks in the summertime?
You just have water everywhere. I mean, water is a really cheap resource. So, and here's the thing, and a lot of guys screw this up, right? In all realms of poultry, I ain't picking on just Gamefowl guys. Chickens want their water in the shade where they want to hang out in the middle of the day. So you keep your water in the shade area, not out in the blazing sunlight. So just pay attention to where they're hanging out in the middle of the day on the hot days. And that's, you can find the places where you need to keep water access.
I mean, let's analyze this. Like, most of the people in the comments, I don't think I've seen any that had a female name. We're guys here. I do know we do have some female listeners, but they're the same too. When you want a cold beer out in the middle of the summertime, do you go stand out in the middle of your front yard with the sun beaming down on you and enjoy that? Or do you go inside where it's cool? Put your chickens in the same, put their water there too. The best thing is going to be clean water, plain clean water. That's great. And me personally, I like to find fruit stands, things like that maybe don't sell all of their watermelons or their cantaloupes. You want to see a chicken go nuts, you throw a piece of watermelon or a piece of cantaloupe in a chicken pen and see what happens. And a funny thing about this, and we laugh about it every year, but I had a 10 by 20 run that I had a bunch of layers in a few years ago. And, it was hot. It was in the sun, and it just had the shade that was on top of the run, and that was it. And what I did was I would keep, several waters in there. I had some bells hanging from the ceiling and had a thing that was up high that would have the water and it would flow. And every morning I would take a frozen gallon milk jug and stick it in their water to, help the water stay cool. But I started, I'd get watermelons and I'd throw it in there because that's watermelons and cantaloupes have good antioxidants and all other kinds of crap. And they eat it. So it's food. It's more sugary, but it's food. And they like it. So it gives them a lot of hydration. I do not have chickens in that area anymore. That run does not exist. But now every summer, I have a lot of watermelons grow. So
fringe benefits, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can, if you got freezer space, you can actually slice your watermelon, when you bring it home. If you can get cold watermelons, bring them home and slice them and then freeze them. Put a little bit of wax paper between them so you can have the right size slices that you want. And you can throw frozen in there. When you get to the dog days of summer, July, August, it's a good way for the birds to cool off in the afternoon.
So I've got
watermelon.
I call them coffin coolers because they're like 5 feet long. You see them at Walmart. They're like 5 feet, probably 1.5 feet, 2 foot tall. I got a few of those because we have beef cattle and we'll use that to make deliveries when people buy beef. And I'll get the watermelons that don't sell when they're starting to get a little soft or whatever. I'll get those, the cantaloupes, put them in those coolers, throw some bags of ice in them, let them set till the next day. And I'll go out there and I'll cut them and toss them in. They love it.
Yeah, I said if you got freezer space, you can actually stockpile them right in the freezer, set them up hard. But
let's look in the comments and see if you have a specific bloodline that you want to keep. However, the two birds you have been breeding die. So like your brood fowl dies, but you have the offspring. What's the best way to keep the bloodline but not introduce? If all you have is their children, then you're going to have to breed them together, and you're going to have to start line breeding based off of that. And for this, Alexander, if you will look on our YouTube page, there is a video that we did, I think it was maybe a month ago, maybe 6 weeks now, with Rip. And Rip gets really in depth on line breeding in that episode. And that's how you would keep that bloodline alive. I have some Rhode Island Reds that there's been no fresh blood introduced into this line for over 90 years. They actually date back to when the breed was originally created. that person is where they came from. So, you don't have to have new blood. If you have a pair off of that specific bloodline, you breed them together and you start line breeding and look in that episode, and he gets pretty in depth, and you take some notes and set you up a program with it. Let's see here. Corey has an off the wall question. What's a good feed mix for deer, turkey, bears? Put in your feeder. Just got some Bob White. What's best to feed them? And is Rapido okay? Yes, Rapido is okay for them. I know people that feed Rapido to their dogs. If you feed it to your deer, they're likely to grow big because they're not getting that kind of nutrition out of the grass. I don't know that I would want to feed the bears, but I do know that we do have some viewers that do want to attract bears. That's a whole different level right there. As far as Bob Whites, I would feed them what I would feed turkeys. I will say their nutritional requirements, once they're mature, you can actually feed them a very good, like if you're feeding a good layer feed or breeding formula to your chickens, you can feed that same thing to your Bob Whites, because I actually have Bob Whites, I have Coternics, and my adult Bob Whites, my adult Coternics eat the same thing as my Gamefowl. So now when they first come out, they need that higher protein because they just do. But Jeff put you a recipe there because he actually he made that. And I will tell you this, whatever you mix that up in, you need to clean it out. Like when you dump it out, you need to clean it immediately because that liquid molasses will turn
before the molasses sets
into rocks, and it's not easy to clean up. But that right there works really well.
That is the top secret formula. So that's what I use every fall when I go to Michigan. That's the 500-pound mix. I only did it once in your mixer, Carrie. Quit whining over there. I only used the mixer one time, right?
Yeah, I know, because you didn't want to get the rocks out of it to use it again.
Yeah. So normally I mix it in my tractor loader bucket, right? So I'll put down some corn, then I'll put down some beans, I put down a little bit of everything, a little bit of molasses, a little bit of salt, and I just layer it in my loader bucket in my tractor, and then with a hoe and a shovel, I mix it up. Right there, I get it up about waist high, so it's comfortable, and I've been known to mix that many years in a row in my loader bucket, so I can do the full 500 pounds.
And knowing where he goes and what he does, I do know that it does attract deer and bear. And I'm pretty sure it will attract turkeys too, because they love the taste of whole corn or corn period, and that the soybeans and that alfalfa puts out an odor that the wind will carry for a long way. And that molasses just makes it sweet.
That is the mix. So
yep, it works.
And you give them the information on the quail. So
yep,
best feed for them and the Rapido. Got it.
Yep. What signs indicate summertime nutritional deficiencies in young birds or older birds?
It's not okay. It's not tied to summertime, and I've heard a lot of old cockers talk about they don't want to raise their biddies in the summer, and because it's harder to get them to grow. Well, they didn't make that nutritional adjustment, right? So, spring and fall, I can start videos on a 20%, protein chick starter, right? But in the middle of the summer, I need like a 23 or a 24 because they're not eating as much, okay? Because they just don't have the appetite when it gets hotter than hot. But if you keep them in a shaded area where there's a good breeze blowing, then you should be able to keep them going. You just got to get the feed into them. So if it's good feed, fresh feed, right, and really good feed, we can grow them all summer long, right? It's just balancing the diet. So
I've got some videos that people have shot of chicks eating chick feed, just about like a grown rooster that didn't eat yesterday, hammering his cup. I mean, they're just wearing it out, going to town. So, what is the purpose of molasses?
Well, in a chicken feed, I don't really use it. Okay. It's part of the jitter juice, when we need electrolytes, but it should not be in a regular chicken feed. Right. So, I mean, when we talked about the molasses a minute ago, that was in that deer bear and turkey mix, but it has nothing to do with Gamefowl. I do not, people don't understand that molasses actually causes diarrhea and loose stools in a chicken, and they do not process it very well. So I'm not a fan of molasses in the chicken feed. But the reason that many feed mills will put it in there is for that smell that we were talking about. So it attracts the chicken to come and eat more feed, right? And it covers up the stale smell because that feed's been sitting on somebody's shelf for 6 months, right? So, it's just covering up the poor quality, and I don't like it in a chicken feed. I don't put it in any of my chicken feeds. So I'm not a fan for chickens. I use a little bit of liquid, like I said, in the jitter juice, the vinegar, a little bit of molasses as electrolyte and energy, because it does have some unique minerals in that molasses, but you only use that during times of stress. So we don't use it all the time.
All right, here's another one. What is the best way to get niacin levels up for my Muscovies? Is there any additional nutritional aspects? I mean, we did say fowl related that should be raised for ducks, and does liver and hard-boiled eggs work for ducklings as well?
So the liver is high in B vitamins. And so the liver and the hard-boiled egg that we talked about, on the other show the other night, right? And we've posted it. It does work equally as well for the ducklings, and it works great. So if you just want to get the niacin level up, probably the easiest thing for you to get your hands on and use. I mean, I would use the Rapido, but or the Breeder supplement or the Show Pro supplement, right? Because they all have excellent niacin levels. But if you only want niacin, then probably brewer's yeast. But
I was going to say brewer's yeast or fish meal.
Yeah.
And, you could use the supplement and get fish meal and a lot of other stuff. But as far as what I have seen, ducks, about the only difference is they do need a higher level of niacin. Swans are a little different, but are they even considered fowl? I don't know. I've been working on something for a lady that is a swan breeder. And
yeah, I've done that.
It's it's a thing, and there's some money in swans. A lot more than what I thought. Okay, Jeff, what is a good feed mix for camels?
So if we're talking about the dairy camels, which milking camels is a thing, it's actually a really good moneymaker because they're finding that the protein complexes in camels is working exceptionally well for children with autism, ADHD, ADD, things like that. So they're responding to it very nicely. And I work with about a half a dozen camel dairies. So it would be like a dairy feed mix that would be, I would want about 800 of corn, 400 of oats, 500 of roasted soybeans, 20 pounds of salt. And I would use my 2-to-1 dairy mineral in there at 75 pounds per ton. And I need to know what kind of forages the camel's eating so that I can get the right dairy mineral in there. But you're going to feed it about a 16 or 17% dairy ration. Now, if it's a meat camel, we're only going to do a 13 or a 14% protein, and we don't need all the extra bells and whistles, but it's still going to be like 1,000 of corn, 300 of oats, 500 of roasted soybeans. I might put a little bit of alfalfa meal in there, but sorry, Corey, you got to dig deeper than that. I got the camel thing covered, man.
When I saw the question, I was like, this is a really nice try, but I already know he's got this.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Kiku says, although here in Saipan, I stand by an 18% protein simply because it's not too much for the birds. Where do I see some eat more and some eat less, but still eating the same feed?
Yep. And on Saipan year round, because their climate is not hugely variant, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the northern Marianas Islands, and I've been to Saipan, and it was in 1988 or 1989. Saipan was beautiful, right? And it wasn't highly developed yet. I hear it's not that way anymore, but anyway. But with that particular climate, I would also be on that 18%, year round. I'd still be supplementing with, because the humidity's high, and there's some really weird, disease potential there. But yeah, I would still be using the Rapido or something to boost the vitamins and keep the immune system up, because the off-the-shelf feeds that are available in Saipan are not all that great. Right? They're just not. But the best choice over there is the Thunderbird Platinum, from what I've seen from labels that guys have shown me. So
yeah,
it's not. Wow, for that part of the world, that's a good feed. It's still not a great feed. So
yeah. Let's see here. Pop that one down. Should boiled eggs be available for chicks 24/7 or given once a day over the feed?
Once a day over the feed. So my math, from years of doing this and recommending it, is in the first week, while they're young, you want to do one hard-boiled egg crumbled up nicely, for one egg for every 25 chicks. And then week 2, it's one egg for about every 15 chicks. Week 3, it's one egg for every 8 or 9 chicks. And after week 3, I don't know that you really need to bother, but it is a really great boost in week 1 and week 2.
And Kitco agrees with you that modernization has ruined the beautiful aesthetics of his island even after the battle. So
yeah, Yeah.
And let's see, we're right at time, and I'm gonna pop this question up. And do we tell them?
Kona, there's no difference. Okay,
It's
there's three
marketing.
supplements out there, right? There's three supplements out there. There's the Fertility Breeder supplement, there's the Show Pro supplement, and then there is the Rapido supplement. And I formulated all three of them. They're all three the same, but the common fowl people don't necessarily want to hang out with the Gamefowl guys because they want to talk about fighting and knives and shit like that. So working with Douglas, we decided to brand it the Rapido for the Gamefowl people, or the sporting chickens, and we separated it out. And then Kerry came along, started up Champions Blend in the Show Pro line, and he needed a supplement for his clientele, right? Same product, same formula, and look for. Here's the thing: the Rapido name is going to go away in the next couple months. Not sure when it's going to happen. Probably when we run out of labels, and at that point, everything's going to be Show Pro. It's going to be the exact same formula. You know how I know? Because I make it. It's going to be the exact same formula moving forward. It's not going to change. I know there's some bad people out there, saying shit that they're just talking out their ass. I make the Rapido, I make the breeder supplement, and I make the Show Pro. And so I am in control of how all those formulas are put together. None of them have changed. None of them are going to change. So,
and see, that was one of the reasons why I wanted this, because, I wanted to have both sides. But, now we're at a point where the hobby is being attacked and people do not want any attention. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about making changes to not draw attention. Even months ago when we took the stickers and everything off the boxes. So that's just a part of it. And it's modern. It's marketing. Daniel wants to know what is different about the red. And the red has a couple things in it that Jeff and I will probably take to our grave that enhance pointing. It has the nutritional part of Rapido in it. It's got a couple extra ingredients that help make that process work.
Yeah. We put stuff in there that A, gives them a burst of energy, and B, triggers their alertness and their awareness, actually gives them a little bit of like hyperactivity. And if we tell you everything we know, then we ain't the only ones that know it. So.
That's right. Guys, I appreciate it. It was a really good Q&A show. Y'all keep those questions coming. We'll have another one in a few weeks, and we'll make a list, and that's where we get them. Till next time, y'all have a good evening, and keep them crowing.